Okay. Isopanishad. I think we were in the middle of the purport of mantra 8, but almost towards the end. I think we begin from here. God is described as Paribu. So I'll just quickly read the translation of the mantra to refresh our memory. As such a person must factually know the greatest of all, the personality of Godhead, who is unembodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated, the self-sufficient philosopher who has been fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. So we begin reading from here. Is it possible for anyone to read?
I'm a bit tired today, so I'll have to pass.
Oh, yeah, sure, that's all right. Would anyone else like to read? If no one's reading, then I'll read it. God is described here as Paribu, the greatest of all. No one is greater than or equal to him. In Bhagavatam, we have been reading, the reason we, the living entities, come to this world is because we want to imitate God. We want to become God. So we think we are equal to him. Or we think maybe I'm not equal to God right now, but after liberation, I'll get equal to him. But the scriptures repeatedly tell us that no one is equal to or greater than God. For us to give up this infatuation with the idea that, oh, one day I can become God or try to compete with him. So we may say, but I never say I'm God, I'm not that crazy. But what we do is we try to control. We try to, we think that we are the supreme enjoyers, that we are the supreme proprietors. But we need to have that understanding that only God is the controller, the supreme enjoyer. And he's the best friend of everyone. So other living beings are described here as beggars who ask goods from the Lord. The Lord supplies the things the living entities desire. We are not self-sufficient. We need the air to breathe. We need the sunshine. And all these things are needed for survival, the fruits, vegetables. And so it's by the mercy of the Lord that we have it. If the entities were equal to the Lord in potency, if they're omnipotent and omniscient, there would be no question of their begging from the Lord, even for so-called liberation. So there is a difference between our position and God's position, and the difference always remains. That God is always supreme. Even after liberation, the living entity does not become equal to the Lord. Otherwise, why is a soul asking Lord for liberation? So there is a difference. And for us, this whole point of us being in this material world to understand this difference. Real liberation means going back to Godhead. Liberation, as conceived of by an impersonalist, is a myth. And begging for sense gratification has to continue eternally, unless the beggar comes to his spiritual senses and realizes his constitutional position. So liberation as conceived of by an impersonalist is a myth. Why is it a myth? Because one may think that I'm going to merge into the Supreme after liberation and I don't exist anymore. But Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, when he's speaking about the soul, he says the soul is eternal, is unchangeable, is immutable. And we are always individual souls. And he says in the 15th chapter, Mamavamsa Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. We are eternally parts and parcels of Krishna. Then in the 4th chapter, he says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings. Nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So we as individual souls, we have existed in the past as individuals. We are existing right now as individuals, and in future we will continue to exist as individuals, even after liberation. Not that in liberation we give up our individuality. No, it continues. Our individuality continues. What we have to do is we simply have to understand our position. That is self realization. Our position in relation to God. Only the Supreme Lord is self sufficient. When Lord Krishna appeared on earth 5,000 years ago, he displayed his full manifestation as the personality of Godhead through his various activities. In his childhood, he killed many powerful demons, such as Aghasur, Bakasur, Shakatasur, and there was no question of his having acquired such power through any extraneous endeavor. He was a baby. Few days old, he's killing Putana. Then, few years old, he's Shakatasur also, few days old, he's killing Bakasur, Aghasur. Which child do we see killing demons like that? No one. So it's not that Krishna got some power after he did some kind of meditation or kind of after he got some kind of knowledge. No, Krishna is always God. God is always God. God is not a post. Demigods, yes, they are posts, like Lord Brahma, Lord Indra, Lord Chandra. These are posts, they are living entities, and they're qualified for that post. So if one wants, one can qualify for that post, and then one can be appointed in that position. Just like, any citizen of the country, if he's qualified, he can be voted, he can be elected to become the president or the prime minister or some cabinet minister. Anyone can do that. So these are posts. But being God is not a post. It's not that somebody is appointed or that anyone can become God. No, God is God. This is the point all the scriptures are trying to explain to us. So he lifted Govardhan Hill without ever practicing weightlifting. He danced with the gopis without social restriction and without reproach. Although the gopis approached him with the paramour's feelings of love, the relationship between the gopis and Lord Krishna was worshipped even by Lord Chaitanya, who was a strict sannyasi and rigid follower of disciplinary regulations. So Krishna, he was barely 7 years old, lifting Govardhan Hill for 7 days. I mean, who can do that? Which ordinary child can do that? And Krishna's dancing with the gopis. Someone may say, oh, how is it that Krishna can dance with so many girls? But this subject matter is a matter of highest spiritual advancement. And that's why it was even said by Lord Chaitanya that the gopis are the best devotees of Krishna. Lord Chaitanya, in his personal life, he was very, very strict. He wouldn't even let a woman come near him. Very strict. But he taught that, the gopis' love for Krishna is the most purest form of love. It's the highest. To confirm that the Lord is always pure and uncontaminated, Sri Isopanishad describes him as Shuddham, antiseptic, and Apapa Vidham, prophylactic. He is antiseptic in the sense that even an impure thing can become purified just by touching him. So, something impure, like how we have a gold ring, wash it with water. If it's become dirty, wash it with water, the dirt goes away, the gold can stay. So, antiseptic. The word prophylactic refers to the power of its association. As mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita 9:30 to 31, a devotee may appear to be Sudaracha, not well behaved in the beginning, but he should be accepted as pure because he is on the right path. This is due to the prophylactic nature of the Lord's association. So a devotee, He may appear that his actions are not being well regulated, but he's continuing his devotional service. So he is going to get purified. He is. He's in association with the Lord. He's hearing and chanting the Lord's name. But one should not take advantage of this. One can't commit intentionally sinful activities and say, oh, but I'm chanting and then that's all right. No, that is then committing the seventh offense to the holy name, committing sins on the strength of the holy name. So the Lord is also a papa with them because sin cannot touch him. Even if he acts in a way that appears to be sinful, such actions are all good, for there is no question of him being affected by sin. So a papa with them, sin cannot touch him. Even if he acts in a way that appears to be sinful, such actions are all good, for there is no question of his being affected by sin. So many people say that Krishna, he incited Arjuna to fight, and that's not right, and there'll be sinful reactions. But we have to understand that whatever Krishna does is all good for everyone. So everyone who died on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, they got the same benefit as Arjuna did. They went back home. They got their own swarup, their own spiritual identities. They got liberation. They went to the spiritual world in their own spiritual bodies. So we can see that apparently it's showing that, oh, Krishna is engaging, inducing Arjuna in violence. But whoever was killed in that battlefield, because they were seeing Krishna, they all got purified and they went back home. So all his actions are all good. Because in all circumstances, he should the most purified. He's often compared to the sun. The sun extracts moisture from many untouchable places on the earth, yet it remains pure. In fact, it purifies obnoxious things by virtue of its sterilizing powers. If the sun, which is a material object, is so powerful, then we can hardly begin to imagine the purifying strength of the all-powerful Lord. It's true, no? I don't know if you all know, at least before, like I remember my granny, she would put out the blankets and all that to be dried in the sun, so that it gets purified. All those bugs and all those could be gone away, with the energy of with the sun's rays. So it doesn't mean the sun gets dirty. You see, the sun shines even in the gardens. Sun shines on the flowers. And the sun shines where there is the sewers are there too. But it doesn't mean the sun has become impure. The sun, in fact, purifies the places. So similarly, so if the sun can be so purifying, what to speak about Krishna? Sun is, after all, just a material object. Krishna is God. So we are trying to understand God's position. Any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna. No, not really.
Oh, really? Hey, Hare Krishna. Yeah. Would you like to read the next verse? We'll just read the
Yeah,
Sanskrit and then. Okay.
sure.
Andam tama pravishanti
Andham tama pravishanti
ye vidyam upasate
ye vidyam upasate
tato bhuya ivati tamo
tato bhuya ivate tamo
ya u vidyayam rataha.
ya u vidyayam rataha. Translation: those who engage in the culture of nascent activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. Purport: this mantra offers a comparative study of Vidya and and avidya. Avidya or ignorance is undoubtedly dangerous, but vidya or knowledge is even more dangerous when mistaken or misguided. This mantra of Sri Isopanishad is more applicable today than any other time in the past. Modern civilization has advanced considerably in the field of mass education, but the result is that people are more unhappy than ever before because of the stress placed on material advancement to the exclusion of the most important part of life, the spiritual aspect. I would prefer if you read, because it felt like you were telling the story yourself. It didn't feel like you were reading.
Ah, okay. All right.
You were explaining so well. You were reading better than me. So I would
Oh,
rather
no,
you
it's
read
not
it, please.
that. No, it's not that. It's just I read one line and then I like to speak about it. Okay, we could do
No,
that.
because I
We
was
could do
like
that.
lost in between when you were actually speaking and when you were reading because you were making it go very well. So I
Okay,
had to
thank you.
follow. Yeah, please,
Okay,
if
thank
you can
you.
read it.
Sure. Thank you for your encouragement. So here, this mantra is speaking about knowledge and ignorance. So what is actually knowledge and what is so-called knowledge? You know, sometimes we, of course, we need to know both. We need to have knowledge of the material world because we are, after all, in this material world. But we also need to know spiritual knowledge. What's happened in current situation, current modern times, is all the stress is placed on the material knowledge, whereas the spiritual knowledge is being neglected. And that's the reason we can see why the society, why we are having such social problems as we are having, wars, inflation, or whatever it may be. It's because we as a society have moved away from God. And so we need to cultivate both. We need to have this material knowledge, but we need to have the spiritual knowledge because, after all, we are spiritual beings inside this material body. So, as far as Vidya is concerned, the first mantra has explained very clearly that the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of everything, and that forgetfulness of this fact is ignorance. So, we may think, now, why am I suffering? If we try to see a chain reaction, okay, like what's the immediate reaction? Why do we suffer? Anyone? What's the immediate cause of the suffering?
Past
What?
karma.
Yeah, but what kind of past karma? Because suffering will come with a particular past karma.
Bad karma.
Sinful, yeah, that's right. Okay, so thank you. So we suffer because we have sinful reactions. Sinful reactions to what? To sinful activities. So, as you said, the bad karma. Now, why do we engage in these sinful activities? Why? Because of?
Some desires or
Because of
ignorance.
desires. Okay, yes. So desire, the sinful desire. But why do we have sinful desire? Is because of ignorance. And what is this actual ignorance? The ignorance is forgetfulness of God. And we have forgotten our relationship with God. So we can see how it's a chain reaction. Our forgetfulness of God has put us in ignorance, due to which we have these desires, which drive us to do sinful activities, which give us sinful reaction, which makes us suffer. So all the Vedas, all of the Bhagavad Gita, the Isopanishad, Bhagavatam, they're all trying to help us reestablish our relationship with God. The Sambandha Gyan, they're trying to give us that. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 29, that Bhaktaram Yajya Tapasam, Sarva Loka Maheshwara. He says Sarva Loka Maheshwara. He's the Lord of everything. He's the proprietor of everything. And he says, one who can understand this fact, that he's the supreme Lord of everything, that he is the controller, that he is the best friend of everyone, then one can be peaceful. And this is called the peace formula. Srila Prabhupada would call it the peace formula. If we can just try to understand this verse of Bhagavad Gita about Krishna's position, then we can become peaceful. So the more we are forgetting the Lord's position, the more we are in ignorance, the more we are in darkness. In view of this, a godless civilization directed toward the so-called advancement of education is more dangerous than a civilization in which the masses of people are less educated. Because right now, our criteria, or if you're more educated, is only based on material education. And there is no emphasis whatsoever on spiritual education. But we need the spiritual education so that we can live peacefully while we are here. At the same time, cultivate spiritual knowledge. So the material duties go on, but we need to cultivate the spiritual knowledge side by side. Of the different classes of men, karmis, jnanis, and yogis, the karmis are those who are engaged in the activities of sense gratification. In the modern civilization, 99.9% of the people are engaged in the activities of sense gratification under the flags of industrialism, economic development, altruism, political activism, and so on. All these activities are more or less based on satisfaction of the senses to the exclusion of the kind of God consciousness described in the first mantra. So why do we act? We act because we see, oh, I'm going to enjoy with this activity. I'm going to enjoy with the result, the fruit. I'm going to do this because I'm going to enjoy in this way. And that's what impels us to act. That's what gives us the push to act. And most of us are in this category, 99.9%. That we want to enjoy the fruits of our activities. So in the language of Bhagavad Gita 7.15, people who are engaged in gross sense gratification are mudas, asses. The ass is a symbol of stupidity. And now one may say, oh my God, what language is being used here? How could Krishna use such word? But we have to understand Krishna is our father. Sometimes when the children are really naughty, just to bring them to their senses, we may say some words. Or even to our loved one, somebody may not be willing to listen to good counsel. So we may have to raise our voice, or we have to use something to get their attention. So we should try to understand that Krishna does not want to so to say, give anyone a low self-esteem or anything of that sort, but just to wake us up. That's all. Those who simply engage in the profitless pursuit of sense gratification are worshipping avidya, according to Sri Isopanishad. And that those who play the role of helping this sort of civilization in the name of educational advancement are actually doing more harm than those who are on the platform of gross sense gratification. The advancement of learning by a godless people is as dangerous as a valuable jewel on the hood of a cobra. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that we are getting so much more and more enamored by this modern education, and we are pushing it so much. But is it actually giving us that kind of is it actually giving us education, or is it pushing us more towards ignorance? Because then our activities are evident. Sure, we have better quality of life, we have better like the more and more gadgets, more ease of living. But what about the quality of each person? Are we getting better in our tolerance, in our friendships? Are we improving as human beings? This is what we are trying to understand here. So a cobra decorated with a valuable jewel is more dangerous than not decorated in the Hari Bhakti Sudodaya 3.11.12. The advancement of education by a godless people is compared to decorations on a dead body. In India, as in many other countries, some people follow the custom of leading a procession with a decorated dead body for the pleasure of the lamenting relatives. In the same way, modern civilization is a patchwork of activities meant to cover the perpetual miseries of material existence. So, material existence, at any given point of time, every living entity is afflicted by either of the three miseries. One is misery caused by our own body or mind. Another is caused by living entities or by nature, pandemics, earthquakes, hurricanes, whatever it may be. So at any given point of time. So Prabhupada is helping us explain, what we are trying to do is we are doing patchwork. Patchwork. We are trying to say that, the miseries don't exist, so I'm going to do this. But what happens is the miseries continue. It's not finding actually a solution to the problem. Patchwork, like, I see there is a hole here, let me try to fill it up, but then that's creating a hole somewhere else. And then, let me try to fill it up, but we are digging somewhere else to fill this up. So then there is a hole here. And then everyone gets busy just trying to dig holes and fill up the holes. All such activities are aimed towards sense gratification. So, but then reading this, does it mean that, nobody should do anything? No, by nature, by the modes of nature, we will do the work, what we are supposed to. Krishna didn't tell Arjuna, don't fight. Krishna told him, you're a Kshatriya, you fight. So the people who are in that mode of leadership, of improving the modern civilization, they will do. That's all right. But at the same time, cultivate knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, so that there is a balance. So understand, so that one can understand, what am I doing in this material world? It's not that we have to give up, no need to use my laptop anymore, or no need to use my mobile anymore, because that's a sign of modern civilization. No, everything can be used in the service of Krishna. So, but above the senses is the mind, and above the mind is the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul. Thus, the aim of beyond education should be self-realization, realization of the spiritual values of the soul. So in Bhagavad Gita, the chariot, there's a photo of the chariot, the scriptures, they help us understand. The senses, they are like the 5 horses. And then the mind, it's like the bridle, the reins. So the mind helps to control the senses. And who's holding the reins is the intelligence. So the mind is higher than the intelligence. And intelligence is getting the good counsel from the soul. So the real flow of power is supposed to be the soul gives the intelligence. The soul, because the intelligence is so close to the soul, so the soul gets the intelligence gets the direction from the soul that, I'm a part and parcel of God. And then with that intelligence, the mind is controlled. And when the mind is controlled, the senses are controlled. But what happens to us is that we let the mind take us on a free ride. Wherever the mind goes, we let it go. Wherever the senses go, we let it go. And then the intelligence and the soul are in a horror, Like imagine if the chariot is going anywhere in whatever direction, the passenger is going to be so horrified. That's what's happening to us. Because we are not able to understand that it's with the intelligence we need to guide the mind. And the intelligence, how can we get this intelligence? We need to hear. Hear from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And then in this way, gradually, we can get knowledge of the self-realization. Any education which does not lead to such realization must be considered avidya or nescience. And to culture such nescience means to go down to the darkest region of ignorance. So knowledge, Vedas, that's where we are getting all the knowledge from, Vedas. And what is all the Vedas? What is the essence of the Vedas? Is to understand God. Vedascha sarvet aham eva vedya, Krishna says in 15th chapter. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. So what is the purpose of education? What's the purpose of getting all this knowledge? To come to understand Krishna, to come to understand God, to come to understand our relationship with God, and come to understand how we can approach God through the process of devotional service. According to the Bhagavad Gita 2.42 and 7.15, mistaken mundane educators are known as Vedvatarata and Maya Yapahrata Gya. They may also be atheistic demons, the lowest of men. Those who are Vedvatara pose themselves as very learned in the Vedic literature, but unfortunately, they are completely diverted from the purpose of the Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita 15.15, it is said that the purpose of the Vedas is to know the personality of Godhead. But these Vedvatara men are not at all interested in the personality of Godhead. On the contrary, they are fascinated by such fruitive results as the attainment of heaven. So someone may say, I'm very learned in the Vedas. But if one says he's learned in the Vedas, he has to come to understand the position of God. Because that is the essence of all Vedas. All the Vedas are trying to help us understand the supremacy of God. But if one just follows the Vedas to go up to the heavenly planets, then one has not understood the essence of the Vedas. One is just still on the outer. One has not got into the real meaning. When we are saying essence, the real essence. So, yes. Yes, please.
No, I'm sorry. I spoke to the pet of mine. The
Oh, that's
dog
all
came
right.
here.
No, that's all right. Did anyone have any question or comment till now what we have read?
Mataji, you spoke now about like being a better human being and practicing tolerance and humility and all that. So I just wanted your suggestion. What is the best way to practice tolerance? Because you don't really know, right, that I'm being intolerant or I'm losing my temper or whatever.
Yeah. Also, we have to understand what we have to tolerate and what should not be tolerated too,
Yeah.
right? And then, okay, once having that understanding, then the more we chant, the more we will be able to tolerate. Because we speak of humility, but what is actually humility? Is to understand our position in relation to God. Because we may speak humble words, but they may just be words, But whereas the consciousness is completely different. And so the more we are able to understand our position in relation to God, the more we will be tolerant.
Yeah. Yeah. So just basically chant more.
Just basically chant more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, we can make some efforts that what am I speaking? How is it affecting others? Should I be, I should just what should I do in this situation? How should I handle the situation? Those things are helpful to become. We need to be self-aware, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, those things we need to, but the real thing comes when we can chant well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I
Thank you,
stated in mantra.
Mataji.
No, thank you. Thank you. As stated in Mantra 1, we should know that the personality of Godhead is the proprietor of everything, and that we must be satisfied with our allotted portions of the necessities of life. Are we satisfied though? Or are we always saying, oh, if this was better, then I would be happy. Or if this was better, then I would be happy. But here, Mantra 1 is saying we must be satisfied. Understanding that God is the proprietor, understanding our relation, our position in relation to God, understanding that God is my best friend. The purpose of all Vedic literature is to awaken this God consciousness in the forgetful living being. And the same purpose is presented in various ways in the Vedic different scriptures of the world for the understanding of a foolish mankind. So we say, right, that the Vedas, they are giving us these three, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. All the Vedas are for this. All the scriptures are for this. Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. Sambandha. What is my relation with God? Abhideya, how to approach God. Process, devotional service. So what is Sambandha? I have an eternal loving relationship with God. I am an eternal part and parcel of God. I'm an eternal servant of God. This is Sambandha Gyan. Then Abhideya. That's the process of how to approach God, how to be situated in that relationship. And that is devotional service. The process, devotional service, Abhideya. And Prayojana, the goal, Prema Pumartha Mahan, love of God, to revive our love of God. So all the Vedas are for this, to bring us to this position, because we have forgotten it. And so we are being continuously reminded by the Vedic scriptures. Krishna comes time and time again to remind us. He sends his incarnations or expansions to remind us, or he sends his confidential devotees to remind us, to bring us back home, back to Godhead. So we'll stop here for today. That's okay. Time's almost up. Did anyone want to add anything else? Okay. So thank you so much for listening and enjoying it. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare